I was born and brought up in New York City, and we lived in the Bronx, New York. I went to school in New York, went to high school as well. I met my wife in high school. We were married for 69 years. Then in high school I became a high school photographer. But I also started to photograph all the big bands, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, Frank Sinatra. And when I got out of the service, photography became a very big thing, and that's how I ended up getting into the two-way radio business. And one day at a convention, that's how I met Oki. And they introduced themselves, told me about cellular, which I didn't know anything about. Evidently, Oki had a big contract with AT&T to build the first cellular phone for them, the very first phone. And they evidently heard about me because I was very, very active in the industry. And that's how I ended up going to Oki. My job was to build a company. We had a great association with AT&T because Oki worked with AT&T on the trial. The trial was Motorola phones, E.F. Johnson phones, and Oki phones. And it was divided up by about 2,000 people in Chicago, and they were testing the technology to see how it would work. That was what they called the very first commercial phone call. Oki had to build their own phones for that test. It weighed 82 pounds. It was a car phone, of course, and in the trunk of the car, it took up the whole trunk of a car, and in the front of the car it was a big telephone, big handset. After the trial, that the Oki phone excelled. It was, they had no problems with it, and it was just really a great phone. Then eventually we built a plant in Norcross, Georgia. All the phones that we made at that time, which were the phones that were now being sold to the public, this was after the trial of October 13th, 1983. This is where all the phones were going to be made rather than Hanzhou, Japan. We had what was called 11 years before breakdown, meaning that the phones will go for 11 years before you have a breakdown. There was nothing like that. We were really the first ones that really came out with a production of phones. We even came out before Motorola on phones. When we perfected the phone, we sent it to the FCC laboratories. I was so sure that it was going to pass. Very, very seldom does anything pass the first time with them. I brought the phone personally there, and after about 3 or 4 days, I got the word that it passed. And I was really so excited. I went to every one of the 7 Baby Bells and had an association with them and got friendly with them. And we ended up making the phones for the 7 Baby Bells, and each of them would have their own name on the phones, you know, like Bell Atlantic, 9X, or whatever it would be. We had phones out way before Motorola in those days, I mean, because of our association with AT&T. So we were the first ones, really the first ones that had phones on the streets. We not only had the first phones, but we had the first FCC license. And then, of course, we had the first phone call was made on an Oki phone in Bob Barnett's car. We came out with a whole lot of other things that nobody else came out with. We came out with the briefcase phone. We came out with that first. We came out with a bag phone. We came out with a visor phone. And the visor phone, on the sun visor of a car, ended up selling that visor phone to Chrysler Corporation. It was a great hit. It was unbelievable. You were able to put in memory 10 different people that you call most by just pressing a button. Bell Laboratories really deserves a lot more credit than you ever hear. They really are not getting the credit deserved. They are the people that developed cellular phones, and people don't know that. They just don't know that. There are so many engineers that were in the Radio Club of America that I was very much involved in as well. They worked so hard in the early days that we know of developing cellular, and they never got the credit for it. When I was in Japan one day, the chief engineer of Oki came over to me, and he had like a wooden model of a phone that looks like today, like a Apple phone, that size. It was made out of wood. I couldn't believe it. I said, you have to give me that. I'm having a meeting with the president of AT&T in Baskin Ridge. I said, when I go back, I said, I gotta have it to show. Oh, that's the only model we have, I can't. He said, anyway, he heard that who I was gonna meet with, so he gave it to me. They had the foresight of saying, this was the chief engineer. And how did he know that? How did he, it's amazing.